I guess I could have just easily have told India that I've been doing this for quite a while, and that probably would have sufficed. But anyway, just to kind of give an intro here before we jump into it, this was obviously a departure from what we typically do. We typically release a camping report every year in the springtime that evaluates the previous year and takes a look ahead at the coming year. We were about a week away from releasing our report for 2019 and looking ahead for 2020. I had, in fact, for the first time ever done a projection for what I thought was going to happen in 2020, and that seems so foolish now. But so we decided that we needed to kind of take a step back and reevaluate what we were providing, because we're obviously in an unprecedented time. With that in mind, we just took a brand new approach. We went out. And in this effort, we not only brought in campers, but leisure travelers as well, because we really thought that, you know, from what we were hearing and seeing on the ground, that there may be, you know, there was an attraction toward camping among non-campers. And we wanted to have that perspective as well, and to give everyone an idea of what that group of people is looking like in terms of their views on and how this whole pandemic thing has changed people's points of view. So just keep that in mind as we go throughout. It's typically labeled that way in any of the graphics that I show. This was fielded toward the end of April, the last week of April, early May. And, you know, so obviously we're, you know, another 30 days along. A lot of states have already, you know, opened up. I know here in Maine, that's where I'm located, our campgrounds opened up a couple weeks ago, really, but everything opened up a lot more on June 1st. So, you know, things are changing again. And I think that, and what you'll see in some of these results is that they pretty much hold up to what we're already seeing start to happen. So with that, I'll just get rolling. If some of my graphics, by the way, are like this one, it's really busy. I know it's a lot of information on one page, but I wanted people to be able to see in context how people's views are on, you know, some of the different types of travel. So, you know, again, the main takeaway here is that, you know, among campers especially, 4 out of 10 are still planning to take their trips as of this survey. And, you know, few really are not going to, but still, you know, it does show a little bit of a hit there. Again, there's still a decent number of people who are either still planning or they've delayed their trips as well. So staying pretty strong. You can see, you know, here's some of the other types of trips. Road trips are really popular, by the way. That'll pop up a couple more times in these results, especially among that non-camper or prospective camper segment. So you can see even among people who typically don't camp, yeah, the number's fairly small and still plan to take. But you know, the other people have delayed a little bit too. So, you know, you're taking people who don't camp and they're now considering it. But they do want to take road trips and so on. So anyway, this just kind of gives you that snapshot of people's perspectives in terms of, you know, what are they still planning to do? What are they not going to do? But really, there's a lot of stuff still in the air. And here, we also asked about interest in camping. Obviously, campers are still saying that they've always camped and will continue to camp. But you know, if you look at the non-camper segment, the interest there is about a third of non-campers. Again, people who don't camp haven't expressed an interest. And I think, you know, that's a lot of people, by the way. If you start to apply this to overall numbers, that's pretty big. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of households. Only just a little over half have no interest at all. So again, piquing some interest. Again, I think we're starting to see some of this on the ground too. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Just some anecdotes I think will apply, and probably some of you who are listening into this today probably have seen it as well. Looking at that group that we call them prospects, these are people who are actually interested in camping. Um, the reason they just want to get outside, and they just want to get out because they've been inside for too long. It's also an affordable way to travel. I think when you consider this within the context of the economic situation, the high unemployment, a lot of people losing their jobs or being furloughed. Affordability, the way combined with the fact that they want to get outside, that's what's really kind of really attracting people to camping in general. But also 3 in 10 are saying that they feel safer while camping. So again, there's those, even though it's still only 28%, that's still a lot of people. That's a lot of households out there that are saying that this is something from their point of view that's safer. And looking here that the first type of trip they would take once once restrictions are lifted, campers, not surprisingly, are saying that they're going to take a camping trip, at a higher rate. These, as I mentioned before too, the non-campers, that 30% that want to take a road trip. Road trips can be defined in a few different ways too. It's sometimes it does include camping, sometimes it includes other forms of staying, some overnight stays, traveling longer distances and such. But also, somewhat anecdotally, and I think actually not even anecdotally too, we'll see this in some later results, the fact that people are taking road trips or want to take road trips to visit relatives who live further away. There's after being isolated from people for several months, this desire and again, a road trip is viewed as a little bit more a safer way to travel. People don't really want to participate in air travel. So, and you can see those in the figures below too, that, again, a road trip is an attractive option and can be combined with camping too. So, and, again, when you look at the share of trips accounted for by camping, among all leisure travelers, we're seeing a bump there. Their plans before the pandemic and after. And among that, I really like, even though in campers it increased, but that prospective camper group, that's a pretty big, that's a 10-point uptick within that group. So, you're going from a group that was gonna, before this hit, they had planned on 3% of their travel being accounted for by camping, which is probably, they were probably gonna take one trip and see how it went. To it being 13%, up those 10 points. That's a substantial uptick, and again, that's getting a lot of new people out there and experiencing the outdoors. I'm going to take just a moment here, and because I intended to say this up front. These results are for the national study. I looked at everything by region, and we did do some more granular levels of looking at geography. Most of these results don't change much by region. So there's a real consistency nationwide in most of these results. We see some minor differences. So in fact, I just did the southwestern states. We had enough sample to be able to do that, and not a lot of differences are popping up there. Here, this is looking at camping in terms of whether they feel it's safe. And obviously, campers pretty much overwhelmingly say it's safer or just as safe. But look at those prospective campers. Again, half of them feel it's a safer alternative, and then you add in that it's just as safe. Camping is viewed as a safe way to travel. Again, within these unprecedented times here, that it's viewed as a safe option for people. Being outside, in general, people view as being safer. So, again, more than half of all leisure travelers are view it as a safer option. And I do think that that's really important for the industry to consider. And we also did this as a ranking with some different options to see what popped in. Again, I just did this among all leisure travelers. It's fairly consistent that you have about half the leisure travelers say that camping is the safest way um, to travel. So, and I like that off the grid cabin too. They're highly related. But here you'll also notice the staying at friends or relatives' homes while on vacation and the road trips. Those two are highly related. And that applies to what we saw earlier, the desire to visit relatives, to take some road trips. And I think the outdoor recreation part of this is woven into that as well, that people want to get outside. They feel safer outside. And thus, taking a road trip, combining it with some outdoor recreation, I think again, you're probably already seeing some of this happen. A lot of newbies are out there, and again, we're seeing it here in Maine quite substantially. Here again, this is looking at the amount of time spent outdoors. Again, you can kind of see that campers and especially the people in general. This is all leisure travelers in the Southwest. This is one of the ones I included that has that differentiator in there. But campers in the Southwest have spent even more time outdoors. So yeah, I think in general you have a little bit more of an outdoorsy demographic in the Southwest, living in those areas, obviously with all the natural features and attractions that. But in general, you're looking at people, quite a few people spending more time outdoors. But not to be ignored is this really large block of people who have spent less time. And if you look at that block among campers, especially, that is what I would call pent-up demand, because campers we know are pretty outdoorsy in general. They're a very outdoorsy group of people. We've seen that over and over throughout the years. This is why some places are going to see a real heavy influx of campers. That desire is strong. Sorry for the typo in the up here. That should not say Northeast. I live in the Northeast, so obviously it was just something that got included there. But it's anyway. The idea that again, there's a large block of people who have spent less time outdoors, and this across the board is going to impact everything everyone's doing on the ground, from resources, whether it's people resources to other resources to having all these new people out there as well. It's really going to push things forward a lot in terms of the number of people wanting to access some of these areas. Looking at the reasons, here again is a lot of people have more free time. That's the ones that are spending more time outdoors. It's they're not even people who aren't unemployed or furloughed. They're working from home, so there's no commute time. There's none of that involved. So people do have more time to spend outside. But you still have 50% that want to get outside more after being forced to stay inside. Again, you're seeing a lot of people who are being attracted to outdoors activities and outdoor recreation because just by the simple fact that they haven't been able to do it and they've been cooped up for too long. So there's this real big desire to get outside. Outdoor exercise. Again, this is anecdotally, gyms are closed. A lot of people, people can't go to the gym. They can't participate in a lot of the indoor types of exercise that they've had. So they're using outdoor recreation as a form of getting more exercise. And this need to get away from noise and distractions. I did a whole set of results, by the way, just because I'll try to mention them as we go through, about household size and some of these results. This is one of those that is significantly higher for large households. So especially with a lot of kids in the household. So that even though it's only 29%, it's closer to like 45% among households that have like around 4 or 5 or more within the household. So it and wanting the kids to get outside more. Again, those are highly related items. And then you look at the reasons they've spent less time indoors, and the concerns over the virus, of course, is keeping people in their homes to a great deal. And the restrictions, you combine those two, that's a lot of people. But the concerns are, I think, in some respects, are a little bit more personal versus the restrictions. It's like someone's telling me I can't. So weather conditions was a little bit different based on where you're located, especially at the time we did this. I mean, we here in Maine, we still had snow on the ground when this was fielded, the end of April, and we got close to a foot of snow, I think the third week of April. So it prevented a lot of people from being able to get out just because of the spring season and having some pretty bad late season snows. But yeah, you can anyway. You can just kind of see that a lot of this makes sense. It's fairly intuitive as well. But looking at kind of quantifying some of it, as I think is always important. In this graphic here, what we're looking at, among people who were able to spend more time outdoors, what's the impact kind of on their attitude toward travel? And because again, this impacts anyone who's involved in travel tourism and outdoor recreation. The fact that the people who have been able to spend more time outdoors are saying that travel is now much more important to them. They're getting out there. They're kind of getting the desire to travel a lot more. It's interesting that the people who have had to spend less time outdoors, it's not as many. Half are saying that it's become more important, and half are saying it's become less important to them, which I find really interesting. So there's something going on there with that group. I haven't explored it a lot more in detail to see what might be impacting that, but I think it is interesting that if they've been forced to stay indoors, especially among campers, that the idea of travel has become less important to them. I suspect there's some family stuff going on there. A lot of people have actually spent more time with their families and their kids, their immediate families. So there could be something going on with that. And then when you kind of look at leisure travelers overall in general, you see a similar type of pattern, not as pronounced, but again, campers are just a much more avid group of travelers in general. They get out, not only do they get outside more, they just travel more in general. They spend a lot more of their vacation time. They just spend a lot more time out there, out and about. In this one, this is a somewhat similar type. We did some items that were somewhat redundant. We really wanted to kind of hammer at the attitudes and views towards whether it's travel in general, because we think that's important to the industry overall, as well as specifically the outdoors and outdoor recreation, and not just camping too. So their views on nature and experiencing the outdoors. Again, it's increased the importance for both leisure travelers and campers. And again, this whole idea of people kind of being forced to not be able to experience a lot of the things they want to, has really highlighted in their minds. And I think this is probably a little bit more meaningful than the previous one. The previous one, it's interesting. But anyway, this tells you that, there's about a quarter that spending that time outdoors has become less important. Again, you see that increase again with, based on family dynamics and what, the household situation is, their jobs. For some people, especially, people who are going through, the furloughs and layoffs and stuff, that their priority is, financial and to get, a job, to kind of look at those things. So for them, it's like, it's less important, in the hierarchy of, their day-to-day lives. Actually being able to provide for themselves and their families is more important than spending time outdoors, which, I think that's fairly intuitive. So anyway, but I think, in general, the idea that spending time outdoors is more important is really the key takeaway here. This here, this is the whole idea of assurances. I know this is, again, one of those really busy pages with a lot on here. So when I look at this, what it really says to me is that when people are out and about, they want some kind of assurance. The more, the better. It's to put their minds at ease. It's going to get them to relax a little bit, because we all know when people are experiencing outdoor recreation, one of the benefits there is that it relaxes them. They want to be relaxed. It's a form of escapism. So these things, the more assurances people can provide, the better. What I've been trying to say quite a bit to people is that most of the people in these outdoor recreation spaces who are providing outdoor recreation, whether it's camping or any other type of recreation, it's like, you're the experts. You know about a lot of this stuff. You've probably already looked into it. There's tons of information. There's tons of webinars on what to do, from things like cleaning protocols, how to set up, campgrounds or trails or whatever that kind of allow for better distancing, keeping group sizes down, and so on. People want to be reassured about that. So be the expert. Be the person who's out there and saying, I know about this. I've looked into it. Here's what we're doing, and provide that information for people. I think it's really important for people to feel that as they go out and about in their recreation activities. There's obviously, we know there's going to be some who don't care, and that's all right too. People have their own opinions and behaviors, and we won't judge. But by the same token, again, things like, what I attach to most here, by the way, is the cleaning protocols, because it's a little bit higher for looking at that issue beyond 2021. If you look at it beyond this year, half the people are saying that it's important for 2021 and beyond 2021. So that's something that I think people can really attach to and say, that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind in our operations anyway. And there's going to be that subset of people who are always going to feel like, kind of, what are you doing? Those assurances and these things, a lot of them have, staying power beyond, just this year and the next few months. So they're definitely worth considering. When you look at that prospective camper group, by the way, there's a lot of uncertainty in that group, and that's okay, because if they haven't been camping before, then what's their frame of reference? And I think that's the group that needs the most help. They're not used to knowing what to experience when they go to these places. They don't know what to expect. They may not know what to do in general. And again, this is a place where I think people can assert their expertise in this space and step up and help these newbies, because, I'm just going to, here is one of the things I was going to talk about a little bit in terms of anecdotes. For example, I've been talking to some people who within the state of Maine here who are on the ground, monitoring the trails and the campgrounds and such. And they're seeing a lot of newbies out there, a lot of people who don't know what they're doing. They're reaching out a lot. I mean, I've been doing a lot of social media monitoring too. There's a ton of people that are reaching out. They want to know places to go. They want to know about gear. They want to know what to do, how to approach it. And I think in some respects, being in the Southwest too, where if you have a lot of newbies going out into some of these arid places, again, you have a different set of challenges there as well. Maine people get lost in the woods because it's so thick. Out there, they go out in the desert and wander around and maybe have a 10-ounce water bottle or something. None of us want that to be the case. So, again, providing good information, looking at what people are doing, and understanding that the group of people who are flocking to some of these areas, one of the reasons they're going there is because they go online, and that's where everybody tells them where to go. It's like we have a couple trails here in Maine that have never seen the volume that they have now. There's a trail not too far from where I live, Typically, it's one of those places you can go on a weekend. There might be 10 cars, the most, in the parking lot. The guy from the state counted 103 cars this past weekend at that trailhead. And it's just, and again, it's one of those places all the guidebooks say, hey, go here, it's a great hike in Maine. So, again, that that whole idea of new people out there, seeing the uncertainty here, we saw it in a lot of other areas too. It's just really an important thing to consider to anyone who's involved in outdoor recreation. That there's, in a typical year, by the way, we know that there's fewer than 10% of campers are new. It's usually between 5 and 7%. This year we could be looking at 30% new campers. So that's a big deal. That's a lot of new people out there that are going to need some guidance. Here, this is what people are looking forward to most once they feel it's safe to travel. And again, spending time outdoors with family. Again, this gets them out of the house. They want to get out there and do stuff. Again, they felt cooped up. People who don't even do outdoor recreation now want to get outside and do stuff with their families. Again, outdoor recreation, traveling in general. This whole result here of spending time in the outdoors without the kids, I put that in there because I thought it was kind of funny. But I think by the way, this number shoots way up with the number of kids in the household. So households that have like 4 or 5 kids, even 3 or more, really, you start to see it spike, that there's a desire. And I think this is important too, that parents are looking for some away time. The kids are at home, they're being homeschooled now, they've been cooped up inside, and they want to get out and have some time on their own in the outdoors. And this could be camping, it could just be hiking or anything. But again, I think all these things are important to consider, that we're seeing a real changing dynamic in how people are experiencing the outdoors and the types of people who are. Just to look at, this is kind of a snapshot of outdoor recreation pre and post. What I did is looked at this to people who are experienced in outdoor recreation and those who are not. It's pretty interesting to kind of just review this list ever so briefly. But the people who are new to outdoor recreation, they have a different set of activities that they're interested in. And you're kind of looking at people who, again, things like fly fishing, more than doubled. I think that's really interesting. I like to fly fish, so of course I find it interesting. But a lot of the others, they're a little more attracted to some of the sports, like golf and tennis and even team sports. There's a spike there versus the experienced outdoor rec people kind of have their set of stuff that they're going to do and that they always do. So they're a little bit more, you're seeing a little bit more of a mixture of people in this new group who have different experiences in different ways that they want to and are experiencing the outdoors after this is all said and done. So, again, there's, it's just worth considering that people are looking for some variety. I think you're going to have people who they might be from an urban area and they run on the city streets who now want to maybe trail run. You have people who participate in other kinds of sports. Now they want to do something outdoors. So one thing that we talked a little bit about with the main group, by the way, and I think it's important here, even though the number is huge, but if you look at this guided outdoor trips, 23% among new people, and especially talking to the people from the state of Maine, that that is really a kind of an opportunity for partnerships, if you could do it. I mean, at the state level, I know a public entity probably cannot recommend guides to use, but there might be some opportunities to explore here, and they're doing that right now in Maine to try to take some of these newbies that are out there and pair them up with guides and let them experience the outdoors the right way. How we define that, but for example, if you're going on a backpacking trip to, the guides will help them with, learn about leave no trace, stuff like that. How to, but also what gear to get, what's, the right gear. Make sure the trip is good and memorable, because, again, this is an opportunity for the outdoor recreation industry overall to bring in, some of these new people and embrace that. We know outdoor retailers have been hurting quite a bit. So, again, here's that opportunity. You bring in a new group of people. They need to be geared up. They need to have the right stuff. And again, guides can be part of that process. You have these super knowledgeable people out there who know the outdoors. They know the places to go. They're going to show people the places to go and the right way to do it. I think it's a great opportunity for some partnerships at whatever level. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out as well. By the way, being in Utah, you can look at skiing down here. These new people, they want to go skiing. I think that's good. I should look at that for just your area. Again, moving on here, the future outdoor recreation. This I think is important because people are willing and kind of want, I believe, to have some kind of measures to help limit their contact with other outdoor participants. We know that 90% of the people, of the leisure travelers, picked at least one of these as something reasonable to do to help limit contact. And whether it's the number of participants that could access trails or other natural attractions, group size limitations, having things like one-way trails, wearing masks in certain areas, anyway, 9 out of 10 people who want to experience the outdoors feel it's reasonable to do something to help, limit that contact. And I do believe that it's important for places to, again, going back to the slide that I talked about a bit ago, to have, what measures are you taking? What are your policies? What are the things to do? The one thing they don't want is no additional fees. So, but again, it's, there's some good stuff here, some good opportunities to get people, again, that whole idea of getting people to experience things the right way. Group size here, I feel this is kind of related to that. I won't belabor this too much. Some campers are kind of set in their ways, but in general, we're seeing a big uptick here in the people who are only going to camp in groups of 2 or fewer. So, whether it's, just couples or solo trips, it's increasing. People don't want to be in part of these bigger groups. Now, the people who always camp in the big groups, I think they're going to continue to do that. That's what this tells me. But again, in general, there's a reduction across the board in different segments of the population. I see this a little bit differently, but in general, people want to and are planning to camp with smaller groups. When looking at camping experiences, what they want to experience, there's a big uptick in people wanting to become full-time RVers. So I think we've seen a lot of that. It'll be interesting to see how many actually do it. People want to go glamping and backcountry. There's a lot behind this. Again, people staying at public areas, I think, again, is important, especially for your area, that, people want to, access some of these other areas. And there's some more granular detail in some of this that I just simply don't have the time to get to today. But just keep in mind that people are looking for things that help them feel better, feel safer, more isolated. And, I think this uptick in backcountry experiences, as well as like things like overlanding, even that road trip that includes camping, this is, these numbers are pretty high. So if you look here, just kind of looking at what we saw with their level of interest, before the pandemic versus now. Glamping, that's not huge, but look at the backcountry experience. That's up 12 points, and overlanding's up 11. So, and then down below, take kids camping for the first time. Again, there's those newbies, those people that have been cooped up. They want to get outside. They want to take the kids. They're out there, and they're gonna hit all these areas pretty hard, I think. How people want to camp. This plays along the theme. They want to. This is among new prospective new campers. The whole idea of being in a cabin, I just say cabins and structures. This includes, you know, obviously these unique accommodations that people associate with glamping, you know, anything that has kind of a structure to it. New campers in general like that idea. They like being, it provides some safety, security, and not, this is beyond, you know, COVID. This is, you know, safety, security from the elements, from bugs, from bad people, all that kind of stuff. New campers love structures. They love camping. Obviously, a full service cabin with a bathroom. I'll talk about bathrooms in just a minute. But again, you know, this is kind of where they're coming out, falling into line in terms of what they'd like to stay in when they start. Here, this is, you know, kids spending time outdoors. I won't spend a lot of time on this. It's like, yeah, you can see that they feel it's more important now. Kids have been cooped up a lot, and among the people intending to take their kids camping for the first time, they're feeling it's really important. So that, again, I think you're going to see the influx of families and kids out there. Again, first timers. You're going to see a lot of them. You're probably already seeing it in some areas. This disconnecting, again, I won't spend a ton of time on this. I just thought it was kind of interesting to show, you know, kind of some of the generational thing. The Gen Xers, especially, I think they're kind of overwhelmed a little bit between family stuff, work stuff. They want to disconnect, and you know, in general, people do, except the older people don't want to disconnect as much because they're all on Facebook and they're sharing all their stuff with their friends, so they don't want to disconnect at all. But you know, again, this idea, I think, you know, it speaks to work with the mindset of, you know, people in outdoor recreation is at right now. There's this desire to get out and about. These figures are higher. This disconnect numbers especially are higher than what we saw in the previous version, which will release at some point. But yeah, this is it's up. It was evenly split before, by the way. Oh, sorry, I'm going to keep moving along. That one was a duplicate. The barriers, you know, I think, again, it's pretty logical here that, you know, work status and financial, we talked about that a little bit. Other family members don't want to go camping. Some of this stuff we've seen before. But I think this notion of having the right gear, and here I pointed out that 91% of those campers, they're interested in trying something new. Like whether it's taking the kids or grandkids camping for the first time, RVing, backcountry, or something like that. So there's going to be a desire for people to have the right gear for these experiences. That they, and it's a barrier right now. They don't know what to do. Again, I'll go back to what I mentioned before, partnerships, whether it's with guides or other industry experts. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the outdoor recreation industry to not only bring in new people, but to make sure they're doing it the right way and that they're going to continue to do it. This is RVing. I thought I would put this in here because I know there's a lot of RVing out in Utah, and the dispersed camping and the boondocking and such. So, even among campers who are not RVers, you're seeing this big uptick. And I don't know if you've been following industry news. RV sales right now are going through the roof. Rentals, even more so. It's a lot of RV dealerships can't keep on the lot right now. Sales, I work directly with some dealerships, and they've rehired some people that they had laid off when this all hit. Their sales have actually been down a little bit the last couple of years, and now it's this interest has really spiked. And so anyway, it's something that you're going to see, and you're going to see it in your areas in the Southwest a lot. Maybe not as much this summer, especially in the lower elevations, but higher elevations definitely, and then into the fall when the temps cool down. Again, there's gonna be a lot of new RVers out there. Again, talking to people at the state of Maine, there's been a lot of horror stories of new people and the things they've been doing. A woman from California, I was on a call with her the other day, and they've had some awful experiences with new RVers out there too. So again, people need to do things the right way, and hopefully we can get them going on that. And one of the reasons, and I bring this up here, is that people are attracted to RVing so much. And this applies across the board. And we had some other questions about the importance of bathrooms and communal facilities. I didn't include that because it's in this item already, and I figured I could talk about it here. And that is one of the things that people are really attracted to RVing for is these concerns over cleanliness at these other locations. They see it as, and by the way, one of the things we knew before any of this even hit was the fact that we knew that RVers, there are about 20% of RVers RV because of concerns over germs and cleanliness. And that was before the pandemic. So what they say is, I know it's clean because I cleaned it, kind of thing. It's really important now. It's important overall. We know that people choose campgrounds sometimes because of the bathroom factor. It's almost always one of the most important considerations, and they deselect locations based on those things. So again, you have an interest in this type of activity because of the use of the cleanliness of facilities, but they also want to avoid some of the communal areas. And again, this is important for anyone who's on the ground providing, whether it's campgrounds or parks or whatever, and is how people are using the bathroom and what they're doing and their avoidance of this. It dovetails with those assurances people need on how places are being cleaned, what your policies and procedures are, your practices, how you're doing it. Documenting that is really important because people are going to make decisions on where they go and how they experience it based on things like that. So the bathroom, never underestimate the bathroom factor. I've been talking about this for a long time. People laugh about it sometimes, but it's huge. Anyone who runs a campground will tell you the same thing. It's a really, really important factor. And there, I think I'm right at about the 45-minute mark. And
awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. So we have received a few questions already in the chat. And for those of you who have additional questions, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat box. Starting with one of the first ones that came through, and I'm going a little bit out of order. David Letta asked, what are the recommended protocols for meeting the sanitation and safety concerns of campers? So could you go a little bit more into the detail on cleaning and making sure that campers feel that safety?
I personally don't deal with this area, so I know that there's some really good resources out there, and I could point someone in that direction because I know some the people who have worked at this. It's not really my area of expertise. What I do think is important is once you establish those, is to shout it from the rooftops. I think that's that's as important as anything, is to make sure everybody knows. But yeah, I can definitely point to some resources for that.
Okay, thank you. And that's something that's perfect that I can include in the follow-up email. So everyone keep an eye out for that, and we'll include that in there. Another question, and this was something that you dealt a little bit with. I'm just not sure if this attendee had their question answered. The term camping means different things to different people. RV, tent, primitive, etc. Does the data parse that? It seems like it did a bit. And do you have a sense of what types of camping respondents are looking to do? So could you go more into detail on that as well?
Now, is that was the question about new people or existing campers? We cast a wide net for camping. By the way, we include anyone. It's kind of self-defined, but we also we have our own definition of camping, which is, you spend time in a tent, RV, even a cabin at a campground, or private property or public land, and so on. So we define that, and we know how people camp. So we can cut anything we have by how they camp, whether they camp in an RV, what type of RV, a tent, what type of tent, if they stay in a rustic cabin or a deluxe cabin, if they glamp. So we know all that. And so anything we have can be cut by those different types of camping. Did I answer that question? I'm sorry.
I think so. And Mark Eller, if you're looking for additional clarification on that, please go ahead and put that in the chat box, and we'll be happy to bring it up. Another question that you answered after it came in, but the attendees hoping for a little bit more detail again, just to dive into. how has the term overlanding been showing up as a buzzword in this data?
Oh, it's been showing up huge. It was showing up before the pandemic. In the next report that's going to come out, you'll see that overlanding's been trending up for a while. It's really it's a growing form of camping that I think the industry is really starting to monitor. So yeah, it's becoming huge, and I think it's gonna be even bigger.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I've seen come in the chat box. So I'm going to wait just a few more seconds. It looks like now we've got some questions coming in. Okay, Mark, that's something that we can include in the follow-up email. And then Scott, if you see this, there's a couple more. From Dean, how important is it for states, communities, and companies to encourage the leave no trace ethics behavior?
I think it's super important, because again, when you're looking at some of these areas, I mentioned that trail here in Maine that had all these people flood in there. A friend of mine hiked down and filled up 2 garbage bags full of garbage, and you could tell it was the weird kind of garbage. It was like donut boxes and stuff, So obviously these are people. I think it's super important because we have to be able to reduce the impact. If we're going to try to encourage this level of participation, it's even more important for people to tread lightly. I personally think it's huge for me, both on a personal level, but professionally too, because these areas, once they get trashed, I know that in Utah, in fact, when I was there this last fall, and talking to some of the rangers, some of the dispersed camping areas and some of the boondocking areas were being shut down because of people's misuse of those areas. So it's important if we want to keep them open.
Thank you. And then the last question that it looks like we've got another one in, but let me go to Rose's question. Do you have any recommendations on balancing increased use with decreased budgets for parks and recreation agencies?
But could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, let me pull this up here. It's, do you have any recommendations on balancing increased use with decreased budgets for parks and recreation agencies?
Oh, resource management. It's huge here in Maine too, because there are so few people out there. I, partnerships, as many partnerships as you can engage in, I think it's the only way. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people within the private sector who are willing to pitch in too. I think there's a great opportunity. I know a lot of private companies are looking for ways to enhance their profile, but also speaks to corporate social responsibility. For example, one of the companies I work with is a company called Dometic. They make parts and refrigerators and stuff for RVs. But one of their initiatives is they send everybody out with a bag to pick up trash when they're out on trails and in the outdoors. So for them, it's part of their corporate social responsibility. It's something they truly believe in. But again, companies are looking for these opportunities to partner, I think. And because I know the budget thing is a big issue, but again, I think that's one of the solutions. And I know that you just kind of sometimes have to reach out and find the right people to do that with. I know that's kind of general, but hopefully it helps.
Yeah, thank you. Joshua says, I'm a writer, Denver Post, Colorado Camping Guide. In educating my readers, what, in addition to leave no trace, should I keep in mind as overarching guidance?
Get expert advice. Get expert advice. We have so much access to information. Get expert advice from individuals. Like I mentioned the guides before, I think it's a great resource. But another one that I didn't mention, but I think is a really good resource for people are these groups. There's a lot of groups out there that are doing a lot of good stuff in terms of getting people in the outdoors, taking new people out and teaching them. I think the group stuff, and we did some research this or before this too on that included some group participation, the organized groups. it's a big factor. It gives people so much more confidence when they're outdoors too. It gives them confidence, it reduces the fear, helps them, and it adds to their enjoyment.
Great, thank you. And then the last question that I've seen come in from Carla, any feedback from parents on sending kids to summer camps, overnight or day camps?
Oh, this is here in Maine. So the camps are split. Some of them aren't doing camps this summer, but some are. I mean, my advice would be find personally, if it was my kid, he's older now, but I would send him to like Outward Bound or something like that. I'd give them an experience that gets them away from maybe some of the facilities. If it depends on how much of a concern that is for you in terms of being in these group facilities, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of times these places, people are coming from urban areas, they're coming from areas where people are packed in, some of the hot spots maybe. You have to decide as a parent, what's your level of risk. My advice would be take them yourself, take them out camping yourself, get that good advice, find some people who are good at camping and experts in the outdoors, and take them yourself. Rent a cabin on private land even. That's a big thing here in Maine, by the way. Tons of cabins, places for people to go that are out there, they're off the grid. I love those places. You can go fishing or whatever. Anyway, I think those are really good options.
Thank you. And Carla, one other note is our last Summit Speaker Series webinar was actually on programming options this summer and after, and that will be included in the follow-up materials as well if you're interested in what those folks had to say. Now, the actual last question that we've received in the chat. I work in adaptive recreation with people with disabilities. Has your research uncovered any information specific to the disability population?
One of the things we know, and here I'll give KOA a plug on this because one, they do sponsor the research, but two, we know that a lot of people with disabilities and physical limitations go to places like a KOA or any private campground that has really good facilities. They're much more accessible. And there's typically always some kind of recreation. There's access to other things to do. It's typically easier for people with physical limitations to get in and out of these areas. The parking's better. There's usually paved paths and such. There are also groups that specialize in this. Again, I know I keep talking about Maine. I live here, so I kind of have to, but Maine has a group, it's called Maine Adaptive, and that's all they do is take people with physical limitations out, whether it's skiing, fishing, all camping, all sorts of activities. And states may have, I don't know if there's one that exists in Utah. If anyone's interested, I can put them in touch with Maine Adaptive. They would probably know. I know those folks very well.
And I am aware of some groups here in Utah, so I can make sure to share those as resources as well. Thank you. With that, we're actually just about to wrap up. If you have any more questions, feel free to email them to outdoorteam@utah.gov. And again, if you have any suggestions for topics that we can host on these Summit Speaker Series webinars, outdoorteam@utah.gov for that as well. Scott, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you diving into the report and answering some questions. And anyone who is on this call, thank you. Anyone who is on this call, we will be sending out an email. Feel free to share with your networks. And again, Scott, we really appreciate your time.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.